Bombay, capital of the state of Maharashtra, a city that combines the color of the East and the fast tempo of the West. A major seaport, an important commercial and industrial center, Bombay is the home of a great cosmopolitan culture. The state visit of their Majesties to India began in this teeming metropolis. For 3 weeks, the royal visitors were to be among India's 430 million people. They were to see something of the heritage of India's past and to witness the panorama of a modern, progressive nation. December the 7th, 1961. The gateway of India was the point of the royal arrival. As they stepped on Indian soil for the first time, their Majesties Yang di-Pertuan Agong and Raja Permaisuri Agong were received by the Governor of Maharashtra, Sri Prakasa, the Chief Minister, Mr. Chevin, and other high-ranking officials. The royal party included their Majesty's eldest daughter, Tunku Sharifa Salwa, and the minister in attendance, Dr. Ismail bin Dato Abdul Rahman. After the royal salute, His Majesty inspected the Naval Guard of Honor, which paraded the President's colors. An impressive review against the impressive background of Bombay's famed waterfront. A note of informality was added when the King and Queen met some 50 Malayan students who were among the many thousands of people gathered to greet them. From Marine Drive, the royal cavalcade left in state for Raj Bhavan, the governor's residence. There, that evening, their Majesties attended a dinner in their honor. But Bombay was just a stopover. The royal guests were to return again to the city later in their tour. The next day, and their Majesties arrived in New Delhi. At Palam Airport, they were accorded a most impressive welcome. Resplendent in ceremonial attire, the King and Queen were warmly received by the Vice President of India, Dr. Radhakrishnan, and by the Prime Minister, Mr. Nehru. Dr. Radhakrishnan was deputizing for the President, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, who was convalescing after his recent illness. After being received with full military honors, their Majesties were introduced to cabinet ministers, service chiefs, heads of diplomatic missions, and other dignitaries. In welcoming the royal visitors, the Vice President praised Malaya's interracial harmony and tolerance, which, he said, had become noble examples to the whole world. He referred to age-old cultural bonds between the two countries and added that many Indians had contributed their strength and skill to the making of modern Malaya. Replying, His Majesty said that he and Raja Permaisuri Agong were looking forward to meeting the Indian people with great personal interest and pleasure. I believe, said the King, that there is no better way than personal contacts of expanding or renewing our feelings of goodwill. It is my hope that this journey in friendship will result in even closer understanding between my people and yours. The 12-mile state drive to the capital was marked by the warm enthusiasm of the people. All along the route, the theme and the mood of everyone was Indo-Malayan friendship and solidarity. As the motorcade drew near Rashtrapati Bhavan, 50 horsemen from the President's personal bodyguard took over escort duty. India's connections with Malaya date from ancient times. It forms an unbroken, undefiled stream. The two peninsular countries whose coastlines are washed by the Indian Ocean have come still closer in recent years as fellow members of the Commonwealth. United on basic political issues, our two countries are dedicated to the cause of world peace. Their Majesties' state visit to India, therefore, a visit of goodwill, is of special significance. It's a renewal of valued ancient ties and a reaffirmation of our common outlook. The first public engagement of their Majesties was to pay homage to the memory of the father of modern India, Mahatma Gandhi. Here at Rajghat, outside the city, he was cremated after his assassination some 13 years ago. Back at Rashtrapati Bhavan, their Majesties called on President Dr. Rajendra Prasad to inquire personally about his health. Dr. Prasad's visit to Malaya in December 1958 is well remembered, for he was the first head of state to visit independent Malaya. During his stay in the Federation, Malayans of all races had occasion to show their respect and esteem for a man of the people who is revered by the people. At a state banquet that evening, Vice President Dr. Radhakrishnan described Malaya as a meeting place of many peoples, a land where there was absolute religious tolerance. Welcoming the Malaysia concept, he said that such a union would contribute to stability in Southeast Asia. His Majesty spoke of the hundreds of thousands of Indians who had come to live and work in Malaya, and the large number who were Malayan citizens. He praised the farsightedness of the Indian government in consistently urging them to give their love and loyalty to the country of their adoption. Later, the royal visitors were entertained to a cultural show. The grandeur of old India is vividly illustrated in the historical monuments at Agra, 120 miles south of Delhi. At Fatehpur Sikri, their Majesties saw the remnants of the one-time capital of Akbar, the great Mughal emperor. Built in 1567, the city was abandoned a few years later for lack of water. It stands now as a silent witness of a vanquished dream. The demonstration of high diving by stuntmen provided a novel diversion. They plunged 80 feet into the city's only well. Highlight of the Agra tour was the visit to the world-famed Taj Mahal. This beautiful mausoleum was built by the Emperor Shah Jahan as a tomb for his beloved queen Mumtaz Mahal. It stands after many centuries, sublime, exquisite, and so lovely in texture and finish that one may well believe it was finished but yesterday. Often described as a poem in marble, the Taj Mahal is truly the epitome of Mughal artistic grandeur. Near the Taj stands the massive Agra Fort. A mile and a half in circumference, it has a system of double walls with loopholes for guns, and is crowned by ramparts, battlements, and parapets. This magnificent structure was designed by Akbar, and many other buildings were added to it by his successors. Their Majesties also saw the Jasmine Tower overlooking the Taj, where Shah Jahan breathed his last as a captive of his son Aurangzeb. From the glories of an ancient past to a dramatic symbol of India's progress, the huge Bakra Nangal complex. His Majesty was warmly cheered on arrival. Located in the state of Punjab, Bakra Nangal is one of India's largest multi-purpose ventures. Construction has involved more than 300 engineers and 10,000 workers, striving round the clock since 1947. Soon to be completed, this great project will benefit more than 3 million people. It will also irrigate more than 6 million acres from its network of canals and drainage systems. The common man today looks to Bakra as a harbinger of plenty, a magic wand that promises to change the face of Punjab, a milestone on India's road to prosperity. The fertilizer factory across the Nangal Dam was recently established to produce calcium, ammonia nitrate and heavy water. The heavy water is used as a moderator in the atomic research reactors at Trombay, which Their Majesties would later visit. This giant factory now turns out 800 tons of fertilizer daily. It's playing an important role in stepping up the country's agricultural output. Next was a visit to the National Physical Laboratory, where the cream of India's physicists are engaged in scientific research under government patronage. A model of the first Sputnik spinning round the globe attracted royal attention. The King also showed interest in the workings of a portable gold detector developed at the laboratory. Meanwhile, Her Majesty and members of her party visited the famous Indian Emporium of hand-woven and hand-spun cloth, India's traditional village industries. Here, cloth produced from all over the country is sold. India has a distinctive art and craft tradition which has been moulded by generations of artists and craftsmen. The wide variety of articles on display reflect this tradition. At Bharatpur, His Majesty had his first respite from a heavy program of formal engagements. As guest of the Maharaja, he relaxed in one of his favorite sports. The Ghana Forest and Swamp outside the city is a famous bird and wildlife sanctuary. The King bagged 15 wild duck on this shooting expedition. The holiday atmosphere was very evident in New Delhi throughout the royal visit. This capital of India, with its checkered history, has an interesting pattern of architectural design, both old and new. But life still clings to the past, and itinerant vendors ply their assorted wares on street pavements. One of the most memorable events in New Delhi was the great civic reception in Their Majesty's honour at the historic Red Fort. In his welcome speech, the Mayor of Delhi, Mr. Shyam Nath, pointed out that Malayan forces stood shoulder to shoulder with Indian troops in restoring peace in the Congo under the United Nations, and he paid a warm tribute to Malaya's stand on apartheid. An illuminated scroll and other gifts were presented to Their Majesties. His Majesty extolled the people of India for the way they were developing their country's resources. He declared that India and Malaya afforded a vivid proof that a democracy which was firmly based on the will and cooperation of the people could and did work in Asia. Speaking at the function, Mr. Nehru said, "I have a special pleasure in welcoming the paramount ruler of Malaya, because in him we are not welcoming a stranger, but renewing an old friendship dating back 2,000 years." In India, some 300 million people live in more than 550,000 villages throughout the country. At Mukmelpur, a small village 11 miles from Delhi, their Majesties were given a sincere and heartwarming welcome. The whole village turned out to greet them with the traditional garlands and Namaste, the Indian salutation. As their Majesties passed through the village, they were showered with rose petals. Our King and Queen are well known for their keen interest in the welfare of the rural people. And here at Mukmelpur, they were to see one of India's massive community and rural development projects. These projects are aimed at transforming the entire character of rural life and economy, largely by means of guided self-help and improved organization. The happy villagers spared no effort to make the royal visit a memorable one. Lucknow, the city of gardens and palaces, is famed for its historic past. During the freedom struggle of 1857, Lucknow was one of the focal centers. Many historic buildings and monuments relating to the period stand as grim mementos of the heroic struggle for independence. Today, when much of its splendor is lost, the city still retains a unique aura of oriental glamour. The impressive Chota Imambara, built by a Mughal king for religious service during Muharram, lends to the scene an atmosphere reminiscent of Lucknow's past glory. Housed in a one-time palace, the Central Drug Research Institute is one of 27 research bodies set up by the Indian government after independence. Here, research is carried out into tuberculosis, cholera, and other diseases. During his visit, His Majesty expressed the hope that the scientists of India would cooperate with their Malayan counterparts in tackling the common problems of disease. A tumultuous welcome awaited their Majesties when they arrived in Madras. They were received by the Governor, Shri Vishnuram Mehdi, and the Chief Minister of Madras, Kamaraj Nadar. Of all the Indian cities, Madras is perhaps the best known to Malayans. In the last century and a half, much of our population has come to us from South India. They came not to conquer, but to live and work, to mix and settle. The city's special ties with Malaya were reflected in the warmth of the welcome accorded to their Majesties. Madras extends over an area of nearly 50 square miles and has a population of 1.5 million. The seat of an ancient civilization, the city has a rich heritage of fine arts, sculpture, and architecture. It has withstood the pressure of modernization to some extent, and even today retains an old world charm. That afternoon, their Majesties visited the Gandhi Mantap, erected to the memory of the late Mahatma Gandhi. The spinning of homemade cloth is symbolic of India's struggle for national and economic independence. Here, young people emulate the great Gandhi by following in his footsteps. Fascinated, Her Majesty tried her hand at spinning. Touring the huge integral coach factory in an open car, the King saw thousands of workers busy in the manufacture of railway rolling stock of all gauges. Inaugurated in 1955, the factory, the biggest in Asia, has been geared to produce 700 coaches annually during the period of India's third five-year plan. The Tube Investment Cycle Factory near Madras is another example of the rapid industrialization of the last 10 years. His Majesty saw the many stages of production. A private enterprise, this Indo-British venture turns out 300,000 bicycles a year, about one-fourth of the country's total production. In the evening, entertainment of a high order was provided by the famous Ragini troupe of dancers. Mahabalipuram, a seaside tourist centre 37 miles from Madras. A flourishing seaport during the heyday of the Pallava rule, Mahabalipuram contains numerous temples and monuments which document the history of a majestic civilization. The Pallavas, a gifted imperial race, ruled over vast tracts of southern India about 1300 years ago. The royal party was most impressed by the sculpture, which even today still seems vibrant and alive. Continuing their journey south, their Majesties were given another big welcome at Kerala, where they made a brief stop. The royal visitors spent an interesting day at the picturesque Thekadi Game Sanctuary in Kerala State. In this park, which encircles the artificial lake, animals roam free and secure in their own domain. They are observed from boats which ply the lake. In Cochin the next day, His Majesty inspected the naval base, which provides berthing and other facilities for ships of the Indian Navy. The King showed keen interest in the technical schools. Fitted with the latest equipment, these schools undertake both basic and advanced training in all aspects of naval warfare. Bangalore, the capital of Mysore state. Here is a city which combines the graceful charms of well-laid-out gardens and parks with the hum of thriving industries. The Indian telephone industries, the first national enterprise of the government, was set up in 1948. Its prime object is to meet the country's requirements for telecommunication equipment and to attain self-sufficiency. With over 8,000 employees, the factory now turns out nearly 2 million telephones each year. The Hindustan aircraft factory was also on the program, and His Majesty saw some of the complexities in the assembly and manufacture of jet aircraft. The factory caters to the needs of the Indian Air Force, as well as the requirements of civil aviation. En route to Mysore city, Their Majesties stopped at Bidali to visit the Women's Association headquarters, and at Ramanagaram, where they inspected the Community Development Centre. At both places, villagers and schoolchildren turned out in large numbers to give them a warm welcome. In India, both voluntary agencies and government are endeavouring to control the growth of population. Family planning has been introduced on a national scale for the purpose of stabilising the population to keep in step with national resources. The people's response has been encouraging. Many measures have been adopted in order to achieve healthier, happier and fuller family life. An agricultural country, India naturally attaches the greatest importance to her livestock. During his tour of the village, the king saw some specimens of breeding bulls. "85 miles from Bangalore lies the garden city of Mysore, many of whose buildings are known for their historical interest. A few miles from the city is Seringapatam, famed as the capital of Mysore under Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. Seringapatam was the scene of the battle of 1799 when the Sultan fell fighting the British forces. This mausoleum of the last sovereign ruler of Mysore is remarkable for its rich and exquisite workmanship. But many other fine buildings adorn the city, giving it a stately character. A trip to Mysore Zoo was specially arranged at the request of the royal visitors. The young cats here were the centre of attraction. Before leaving, Her Majesty and Tunku Salwa enjoyed an elephant ride. The elephants were, of course, bedecked for the royal occasion. Like most Indian cities, Mysore has its snake charmers. In Mysore city, His Majesty visited the government silk factory, an important industry in this state. Large numbers of women are employed here. The fine quality of Mysore silk is renowned throughout Asia. As a remembrance of the royal visit, the Chief Minister of Mysore State, Mr. Wati, presented gifts to the King and Queen and to members of their entourage. The famous Brindavan Gardens, laid out below the Krishna Rajasagar Dam, was transformed into a fairyland for the royal visitors. These gardens, with their fountains and terraced lawns, are a favourite with tourists. On this occasion, they took on a new brilliance. Their Majesties were guests at a dinner given by the governor of Mysore, who is the Maharaja of the state. Bombay, India's western metropolis, gave a rousing welcome to the King and Queen when they arrived for a 3-day visit. At Trombay, 15 miles from the city, is the Canada-India reactor. a striking example of international cooperation in the field of the peaceful uses of atomic energy. It was established under the Colombo Plan. During their 2-hour tour of the establishment, Their Majesties were conducted around by Dr. Bhabha, famed Indian nuclear scientist and head of the Indian Atomic Commission. This project, the largest research and engineering reactor in Asia, provides ample scope for research in many scientific fields. In addition, large quantities of radioisotopes are produced for industrial, medical and other uses. In harnessing the atom, India is keeping abreast of developments in the modern world of technology. Bombay is the biggest centre of the Indian film industry, and on a visit to a studio, Their Majesties watched scenes being enacted from the motion picture Taj Mahal. Indian films are very popular in Malaya, and the country's screen personalities are well known to local audiences. Her Majesty visited the Victoria Memorial School for the Blind. It's one of the largest institutions of its kind in India. Vocational training is given to enable the blind to become useful citizens. The school has a very advanced system of blind education, and the standard English Braille has been adapted to the Indian vernaculars. The curriculum is extensive. Founded in 1902, the school stands as a beacon light, radiating hope and cheer in the hearts of the many whose life is engulfed in darkness. After the presentation, the school orchestra performed for Her Majesty. At Calcutta, Their Majesties were given a great welcome as they arrived for the last stage of their tour. Tens of thousands lined the route to make the state drive a memorable affair. The King was accompanied by Madame Naidu, the Governor of West Bengal, India's only woman state governor. The largest city in this ancient land, Calcutta has a population of 3.5 million. It's one of the leading ports in the east and the main outlet for the produce of West Bengal and the neighbouring states. Huge, sprawling, shapeless and picturesque, Calcutta draws people from every part of India in search of livelihood or fortune. It teems with life, a melting pot of east and west. One of the most revered buildings in Calcutta, Jorasanko House, was the ancestral home of the famous Indian poet and Nobel Prize winner Rabindranath Tagore. This is the spot where he died. Rabindranath Tagore was indeed one of the greatest and most versatile of men. His centenary was celebrated universally in 1961. It was here that he experimented in the various art forms and gave the world the riches of his songs and poetry. Later, students of the Tagore Academy relived some of the master's songs and dances. At the end of the visit, the King praised the Academy for fostering and developing along progressive lines the art forms of India. At Chittarangan, His Majesty saw a model of the well-planned township where workers and families of the huge locomotive works live. Named after the great patriot Chittarangan Das, the factory is designed to meet the requirements of the Indian railways. As a workshop, it illustrates the desire of modern India to fall in line with the progressive industrial countries of the world. The automobile industry in India is of recent development. The Hindustan Motors in Calcutta is one of the 6 approved manufacturing concerns in the country. Employing 8,000 workers, the factory produced 29,000 units last year. At Raj Bhavan, the governor's residence, a glittering reception was held in honor of their majesties. Mrs. Vijayalakshmi Pandit was among the host of dignitaries who attended the function. Guests included a number of Malayan students who had the opportunity of meeting the king. After 3 unforgettable weeks, it was now the time for departure. In a farewell message, the king said that he would always treasure the memory of the warmth and friendliness of welcome by the people of India. Their Majesty's visit to India has underlined the close and cordial relations between the 2 countries. The royal tour evoked tremendous enthusiasm in the length and breadth of the great subcontinent. It has graciously served to strengthen the existing bonds of fraternal affection, mutual respect and accord between India and the Federation of Malaya.